Hello, everybody, and welcome here back up at another episode today. This is the BSN podcast. It is Friday, June 3rd. Hopefully, everybody's having a day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We get ready for a very, very big weekend in the world of sports. You got a ton of baseball on. You got the NBA Finals that just began last night. Obviously, the Celtics had a wild comeback. It was a crazy fourth quarter. The Warriors completely blew the game. And the Celtics were able to get the win 120-108. We're going to recap it in our first topic today, but a wild one. And one of those games where you're going to look at if you're Golden State, and if you lose this series, in 7 games or in 6 games, or, maybe if you lose it in 5 and you're just not the same team as you saw in the first 3 quarters in game 1, you're going to look back at this game. Because these are sometimes the games as a team, you look at what the Nets had happened to them. Right, they lost on the buzzer beater to the Celtics, and this is similar to that. Right, you have a 17-point lead, you have a 96% chance of winning according to the percentages on ESPN. When it got to 89-72, you're dominating the basket. I mean, you're just dominating. Curry's playing well. You're stepping up defensively. You took Tatum completely out of the basketball game, and yet they still lose, and they lost when the Celtics' best player in Jayson Tatum went 3 of 17 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, and only had 12 points in 42 minutes. So now the advantage goes to Boston. Because if Boston wins the next game, well, that puts all the pressure on Golden State to go win a couple games on the road in Boston at the TD Garden. So this series really changed quickly. The trajectory of it just changed quickly, and the Warriors have to bounce back. And you got to find a way to bounce back from such a tough loss like they had last night. So it was a wild game. I actually did not watch. I watched the highlights of the game. I will tell you that because I was watching the Yankees. They got a great win yesterday. Great 2 wins yesterday. Won the first game 6-1. Won the second game 2-1. Bottom of the 8th, Rizzo comes up big in a pinch hit situation. 2 outs. I believe it was like a 1-2 count. Yankees were 1 out away from striking out, going into the top of the 9th with a 1-0 deficit and not scoring a single run. So Yankees took advantage of that, got 2 runs on the RBI, 2 RBI single by Rizzo. I thought we were going to see history. Tyone had a perfect game through 7 innings. He needed 6 more outs. Walsh ended up hitting up a single. Falefa kind of dove, missed it. Most likely he doesn't make the play. But still, you can play the what-if game. Let's say he made the play, so on and so forth. Either way, it was a great win for the Yankees. Another great win by Tyone. Another 8-inning stellar performance. That's back-to-back games now. And you really look at Tyone ever since the start in Philadelphia last year against the Phillies, where he hit rock bottom. He has actually been one of the better pitchers in the game, and he's been phenomenal this season. Rangers tonight against the Lightning. Mets got completely shut down last night. Got 3 hit against the Dodgers. Dodgers were able to get the win. Mets lose 2-0. They just did not score. Had 3 hits. Did not do anything. So they look to bounce back today. That will be another 10-10 start on the East Coast against the Dodgers, who are out, obviously, West Coast. So game 2 of the 4-game set there. Yankees start up a 3-game set weekend series at the stadium, starting tonight with the first game against the Tigers. Coming off a sweep against an Angels team that is very good. Now you play a Tigers team that is very beatable. You should have no issue sweeping the Tigers, in my opinion. So Yankees tonight, Mets tonight, Rangers as well. Game 2. Rangers have the series lead 1-0. Big game tonight. If you win tonight, boy oh boy, we are in the driver's seat, and especially if it's another commanding victory. So for the New York Rangers, continue to protect home ice and get the job done tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, ESPN. So exciting night here on a Friday. Topics today, we're going to start off with the Warriors and the Celtics, recap Game 1, talk about it, the craziness of it, how the first 3 quarters played out. It was all Golden State, and then the final quarter, the Celtics decide to score 40 points and outscore the Warriors by 24 and completely shut down the Warriors on offense. And it was an ugly finish for Golden State, and it was a great finish for Boston. And now Boston is on an all-time high right now. And now Golden State finds themselves in a situation like, okay, we just got shut up in our own arena. we got to find a way to bounce back. So we'll get to that. We also got some breaking news in the baseball front. Joe Girardi today was fired by the Philadelphia Phillies. So former Yankee manager, as we all know, got us our 27th World Championship, has been fired today. He's been with the team for 2 years, and then however much into this season. This was his third season as manager. It's kind of been a wild ride. First year was the shortened 60-game season in 2020. Last year you had, Harper, and you had, last season you underperformed, and then you go into this year and you go into the offseason with all these big ticket free agents, Castellanos, you still have Harper, bring in Schwarber, you add that to a lineup with Realmuto and Bohm and Segura and already guys in place like that, and they just been very underwhelming this year. So it's been a really tough year for them. I'm going to tell you how I feel about this, because I don't think Joe Girardi's to blame for everything. I think there's certain things that there is to put the blame on Girardi, and I also think there's certain things where there's just a lack of talent at certain positions and certain spots on the field. Cough, cough, the bullpen. There's just a lack of talent out there, I really believe. I don't think that's all Girardi. I think it's just pitchers not doing their jobs in big spots. But I'll get into all that. And we'll get to that in the second topic. And then we'll finish off the podcast with the New York Sports Update. Like I said, packed night tonight. Yankees, Dodgers, Rangers. So Yankees look to open up with a win on the 3-game set here against the Tigers. And the Mets look to try and find a way to get a win tonight. You got to get more than 3 hits. You got to score a run, and you got to get more than 3 hits. That's the reality. So tough one last night for the Mets. We'll see if they can bounce back. Lindor as well, injured. So you don't know what's going on with him. Not the time to have players getting injured for the Mets during this swing of very difficult games coming up. But anyway, with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So we're going to start off today's podcast with the Warriors and the Celtics last night. The Celtics coming out and absolutely dominating in the fourth quarter. So that's really the big thing. Oftentimes you talk about, whether in football you talk about playing the full 60 minutes. In baseball, you've got to play the full 9. It doesn't really apply so much to baseball because you see a lot more comebacks in baseball late in games than you probably do in other sports, just because, there's no time and stuff. It's, a different way of doing things. But, you talk about in football, you got to play the full 60 minutes. You talk about in hockey, you got to play the full 60, right? 3 20-minute periods. And you talk about basketball, you got to play the full 48. And last night, the Golden State Warriors played 36 minutes. They did not play 48. The Golden State Warriors played a very good 36 minutes, and the Celtics played a very good 12 minutes. And at the end of the day, it was those 12 minutes that got this job done for the Boston Celtics. Because let's be honest here, the Warriors get off to a very good start. You had the play where Steph Curry passed it to Klay Thompson. He goes running up the court. He didn't even look at the shot because he knew Klay Thompson was going to make it, and he did. The Warriors get off to a good start, outscoring the Celtics in the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, the Celtics were able to bounce back. I believe the Celtics actually took the lead into halftime. They actually took a lead, into halftime. It was I think it was like a 2-point lead or something like that. It wasn't like your major lead. And I would even say that the Warriors actually outplayed the Celtics. It's just the fact that the Warriors' defense is just not that good, and the Celtics got a lot of good looks. The Celtics got a lot of good opportunities. It wasn't even so much, just outplaying the Warriors. It was a lot of, they got a lot of good looks, and they made the good looks as they should. And that was kind of the whole way. That's kind of how the first half went. And then you go into the third quarter, and it's like, oh my goodness, the Warriors just come out firing on all cylinders at a halftime and outscore the Celtics 38-24 in the third quarter, and they put up 14 more points in them. Take a big-time lead, go into the fourth feeling good, and now you go into the fourth quarter and you get outscored by 24. So the Warriors start this game as good as you can be, as good as possible. They got the crowd going, they got some threes, Curry was playmaking, shooting, getting some, threes in, making a lot of shots, playmaking. They were playing well up against a Boston defense. That was the big question. How is the Boston defense going to go up against the best shooter in the world and one of the best, kind of tandems on the planet with him and Klay Thompson? There's a lot of dynamic duos out there. That's a different debate, different day. However, wherever you put Klay Thompson and Steph Curry on the list of duos in the NBA, but they are one of the best out there, and they were in form early. They were passing early. They were shooting early. They were making shots early. They were getting in a rhythm early. And for the Celtics, that everything, you did not want that. You did not want that to happen. The last thing you wanted was Klay Thompson and Steph Curry to get going early. And they did. Now, Klay Thompson got going early. He cooled off a little bit later on in the game, but he wasn't the same player for the majority of the game. But there was a couple big shots he made early in the game to get into a rhythm, get into a flow. And obviously Curry was his normal self, shooting 50% from three, took 14, made 7 of those. And a couple of those were big ones early on. Warriors came out with the tempo, and rightfully so, right? They're the home team. They have the crowd in front of them. Most of us think they are just the better team in general. You know, when you have Steph Curry, when you have Klay Thompson, when you have Draymond Green, who last night was not existent. He shot 2 of 12 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3, had 4 points in 38 minutes. He was not existent. If the Warriors want any chance in this series, they have to find a way, or not they, but more so Draymond Green has to find a way. Because you cannot shoot 2 of 12 in a game, especially when your counterpart, Al Horford, shot 6 of 8 from 3, and Robert Williams made all of his shots from the field. When those other bigs on the Celtics roster did their part, and Draymond Green's not doing theirs, you're going to get outplayed when it comes to that position. And the Warriors did last night. And I'm not saying they lost because of Draymond, but Draymond was terrible. You cannot shoot 2 of 12 from the field and 0 for 4 from 3. And I know he's not your lights-out three-point shooter, but 2 of 12 from the field, there's no excuse for that. And maybe it's just an off night. But if that's how Draymond's going to play every game of this series, Al Horford and Robert Williams are going to have a field day. And they did last night. Robert Williams, in the 24 minutes he played, went 4 of 4, 6 rebounds, 8 points. Made all of his shots, did what he needed to do. And then Al Horford traded places with Curry. In the fourth quarter, Al Horford turned into Stephen Curry, was making big threes all over the place, ended with 26 points, 6 rebounds, 6 of 8 from 3, and overall 9 of 12 from the field. And that was in 33 minutes. Al Horford, you could say, Al Horford was the MVP last night. If the series would end right now, Al Horford's your NBA Finals MVP. Not Tatum, not Jaylen Brown, although Jaylen Brown was solid last night, was struggled from 3, but that's not really his big thing. Not Marcus Smart, even though he made some big plays and made some big shots, but it was Al Horford. And Al Horford was the one who fueled that comeback, led that comeback. And like I said, in the fourth quarter, it was a lot of open looks. And throughout the game, it was a lot of open looks because the Warriors' defense just is not good. It's not a good defense. And in the fourth quarter, they were giving guys open looks left and right. Al Horford was getting open looks. Marcus Smart was getting open looks. I mean, guys all over the place. If you want to win an NBA championship, if you want to win an NBA Finals, you got to find a way to step up on D. Because you cannot allow Marcus Smart to get open looks like that. He might not be the best three-point shooter, but when as open as he was, anybody can make it. So, you know, the Celtics just came out in that fourth quarter, and I don't know if something was said by Udoka. I mean, you got to give credit to the coaching staff because they obviously made the necessary adjustments in between that commercial break from the third quarter where they got absolutely manhandled and then going into the fourth quarter where they, you know, if you're a Celtic fan going into the fourth quarter, you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, look, we're not going to win this game. But try to come back. You're probably thinking to yourself, this game's over. And you're probably trying to shift gears to, game 2 and figuring out ways how you could slow down a Warriors team that was so good in the third quarter. And then you come out and you just dominate. And the Warriors just flopped. I mean, they flopped, and that can't happen. And you see this a lot of times. I go back to the Brooklyn series in round 1, where in the first round, where you had the buzzer beater in game 1, the Nets never came back. The Nets' best game they played was in game 1. That game came down. I mean, they had the lead go up until the buzzer. They made the buzzer beater layup. Tatum did. And they win that game. Nets look non-existent in the next 3 games, get swept. Not saying that's going to happen to Golden State, but losses like this do take a lot out of the team. And I talk about often. I said it with the Rangers. And I've always said it with the Rangers. In both the series with Pittsburgh and Carolina, even this series, the Rangers right now have the advantage against Tampa. And right now the Celtics have the advantage against Warriors because that is a really tough loss to stomach. You're at home. You have a 17-point lead. There is no excuse. And the best player on the Celtics, Jayson Tatum, shot 3 of 17 from the field. And I'm not blaming Tatum. I'm not trying to, blow up Tatum here. He did have 13 assists, so he obviously noticed, and that was a good thing for him. He obviously noticed, look, I'm not on tonight with the shots. I got to dish out assists. I got to play make. I got to find open guys. I got to get guys open. I got to help my teammates because I'm not on tonight. But my teammates are. My teammates are the guys that I can trust right now. And he did that. He leaned on them 13 times, got 13 assists. And that's something that's big. And that's something that good players do. If they realize that they're not on one night or they're just not making shots, they kind of shift into, look, I got to play make now. I got to pass. I got to find the good. Now, it's smart plays, right? It's not you have an open layup and you pass it out like Ben Simmons did last year in the postseason or like James Harden does where, he drives to the net, can go up for a layup. Instead, he passes it behind him or does some stupid move and turns the ball over, as we all so many times as Brooklyn Nets fans. But Tatum realized, look, I'm not on tonight. I don't have it. And he started to pass the ball, and he passed a lot of big plays out. A lot of big shots came off of plays that were generated by Tatum. So he did not play good. He did not shoot well. 12 points, 3 of 17 from the field in 42 minutes. If you would have told me that was the line of and that's another thing too. You're not going to get another game. You're not going to get another game where Jayson Tatum plays that bad. He's been too good this postseason. He's too good of a player to have another game like that. And if you would have told me that Tatum shot 3 of 17 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, had 13 assists, 12 points, and 42 rebounds, if you would have told me, 42 rebounds rather, in 42 minutes he would have scored 12 points, I would have probably thought that the Warriors would have blew him out by 25. And the way it was going, it seemed like that was going to happen. But then Al Horford and company just blew it up in the fourth quarter. So back to my point, like I said, Celtics now have the advantage because the Warriors, and I understand they're a veteranized team. They've been in situations, they've been in the finals many times. This isn't like it's a rookie team or a young team that might get down on themselves, but you could have said the same thing about the Nets. The Nets had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Both guys have finals experience. They were not able to bounce back in that series. Now, some of it could just be the Celtics were the better team, which I truly do believe that. But I think a lot of it, too, is when you have a loss like that, you don't know how much it affects the team. Look at the Warriors and Cavs a couple years ago. You had the J.R. Smith play, right? LeBron punches a locker, breaks his hand. If J.R. Smith isn't stupid, Cavs very well could win that series. Instead, LeBron punches a locker, breaks his hand, not the same player the rest of the series. Cavs, I believe, got swept. Same situation here. Not saying Curry's punching lockers, but it's the same scenario. You go into the fourth quarter with a double-digit lead. You go into the fourth quarter where the Celtics' best player is not existent. And Al Horford and Marcus Smart turn into Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and absolutely dominate. And on your home court. And when we talk about defending home court, those are the moments you need. That's when things need to be done. You can't not. Talk about getting the series off to a good start. A good old-fashioned 10-15 point blowout win to set the tone of the series. And then they blow it. So, going to be a really tough one to stomach. Warriors got to move past this. This can't be something that you dwell on because we've seen this before. Teams either blow leads or lose heartbreaking games or lose on the buzzer or anything like that, and they don't bounce back. Warriors need to find a way to bounce back. Now, they do have a couple days to let it marinate. So, maybe they do come out in Game 2 on Sunday where you do say that's probably a must-win because then you head on the road. And if you head on the road, and then that makes Game 3 a must-win on the road, which is, if you can't win in your home building, winning on the road is going to be that much harder. So Sunday's big. They have today and tomorrow off, so they have an opportunity to reset. That game never happened. You got to treat this like this is the first game. Because if you continue to dwell on that game, that's where it's going to really hurt, and that's where you're going to start to press. That's where you're going to start to, really struggle in the rest of the series. I'm not saying the series is over, but the fact that Boston stole that game, it's inexcusable. There's no excuse for the Warriors. They blew that game. They thought they had that game in the bag. They loosened up a little bit, and they blew it. So they need to find a way to bounce back and bounce back quickly. As a team, Celtics shot 50.6% from the field and 51.2% from three. As for the Warriors, 44.3% from the field, 42.2% from three. So, And for the Warriors, it's tough. And I got to admit, I mean, even you go all the way down, I mean, Derek White. Derek White, 27-year-old for the Celtics. I mean, guy who I believe, didn't he play for the Spurs, I think? Not a guy that many people would expect to come up big. Derek White last night came up big. First season with the Celtics before playing his whole career up to this point with the Spurs. His first year with the Celtics. He had 32 minutes last night. He went 6 and 11 from the field, 5 and 8 from 3. He had 21 points. I mean, 21 points off your bench. The Warriors, outside of Otto Porter Jr., didn't get anything off their bench. I mean, even Jordan Poole didn't do much. He had 9 points, shot 2 of 7 from 3, 1 of 5 from 3, 2 of 7 from the field in 25 minutes. So even he didn't do much. Warriors didn't get much production from their bench. Not saying that the Celtics did, but the Celtics also had a lot of guys play just 1 minute. They didn't have many guys out there. A lot of those guys were just, guys that, a lot of those guys were guys that they put in late in the game, just as kind of, they throw out the scrubs out there, if you will. But yeah, so really tough one for the Warriors. Got to find a way. And what's funny is both teams rebounded the same. Now the Celtics had more assists than the Warriors. And the Warriors did have more fouls, but the rebounds were the same. So it wasn't like second chances were a whole lot crazier. The Warriors had more offensive rebounds. So Warriors actually had a lot of second chance opportunities. They had 12 offensive rebounds. Boston had a lot more defensive rebounds. Also, Warriors took a lot of shots. So look, it just the way this game started was terrible. I mean, if you're Golden State, if you're Steph Curry, if you're any of the guy on that roster, you should be embarrassed, because when the other team's best player does not show up and Al Horford looks like Michael Jordan out there in the fourth quarter, you can't let that happen. So Warriors got to reset. Celtics also too have to move on from this, right? This is a great win, but this isn't the only. You got to get 3 more. Boston's also got to reset as well. And they also have to figure out a way to because the Warriors are not going to blow leads like that all the time. And I don't think Boston's going to sweep the Warriors now. I don't think so. But what I will say is, now the pressure's on the Warriors, because you can't fall down 2-0 going on the road. And if you can't protect home court, where home court, we all know, as many times, that place was packed last night. It always is for, NBA Finals, especially when it comes to the Warriors, because they have a pretty big fan base in terms, a lot of the fans have kind of caught on, during the time where they're, with Curry and all that, but still, they got a big fan base. They had a lot of people at the game last night. It was a packed house. If you lose game 2 and you can't win on your home court, well, you're going to have issues on the road. Anyway, so 8 p.m. Eastern, ABC, Golden State does open up, still as 4-point favorites. And I was wrong. And like I said, the way yesterday's game went, if the Warriors can't bounce back, this might be a short 5-game series. I don't think it will be, but I think I could still very well see the Warriors winning this, but you know how it is. If you lose game 1, game 2's pretty base. Game 2's almost a must-win. And if you lose game 2, well, now game 3 is a must-win, because if you fall down 3-0, I don't care what people say. 3-0, you're not coming back. I don't care what people say. So, Celtics win 120-108. Wild comeback, 40 points in the fourth quarter. Warriors with 16 and get outscored by 24. Really, really, really poor fourth quarter from the Warriors as they look to bounce back. And they need to bounce back quick, because Game 2's Sunday. All right, coming up next, we're going to get to Joe Girardi and him being relieved of his coaching duties. Phillies have fired him today. Rob Thompson, the bench coach, who was been Girardi's guy for a long time. He was the bench coach while Girardi was with the Yankees. Brought him into the bench coach while Girardi was with the Phillies. Now Girardi's out. Rob Thompson's in. I'm going to tell you, is it Joe Girardi's fault? I think to a certain extent it is. I don't think it's all his fault. I think there are certain things that he did wrong during his tenure, specifically this season, because I think this season there was probably the highest expectations on the team when you look at the lineup and you look at the pieces they brought in. But there's also certain things where there's just a lack of talent in some areas of the team. There's also certain situations where it's just out of a manager's control of what he can and cannot do in certain situations. So we'll get to that and much more. All right, so welcome you back here up at the BSN podcast here today, Friday, June 3rd, getting ready for a exciting weekend ahead of baseball and hockey. starting tonight with the Rangers and Lightning Game 2, 8 Eastern, ESPN. So we're about 4 hours out from that. Still ways out from that as we get ready and hope that the Rangers continue to protect home ice and get another win. But we're going to talk about here, obviously just got done recapping the Warriors and the Celtics, and now we're going to get to some breaking news on the baseball front, and I guess you could say, I believe he's the first, unless if I'm forgetting somebody obvious, but the first manager fired First manager fired for the MLB this season. Joe Girardi is the first victim, and I guess usually June you don't see too many guys get fired when you're only 45, 50, 55 games into the season. You're not even halfway through. You're not even anywhere really. I mean, you're closer to halfway than you are not halfway, but still to the point, where you're not even in July, you're not at the All-Star break. A lot of times teams assess, where a team is at by the All-Star break. I know there's usually a couple stamps, like usually Memorial Day is kind of like, one of the times to see, where your team's at. Then like the next one's the All-Star break. And then after the All-Star break, it's like going into September. And then obviously after that, it's kind of the season and so on and so forth. After that, playoffs and all that good stuff. And but obviously Phillies felt the need to fire Joe Girardi. And to say that Joe Girardi's tenure with the Phillies from 2020 to this season has been an interesting one is an understatement, because it really has been. It's been very underwhelming. And at times it's been underwhelming, and at times you see where this team could be headed. Like, it's so weird. So, Phillies fired Joe Girardi after, this is his third year with the team, came in 2020, obviously he coached last season, and yet again this year, and was just not getting wins. They were just not winning enough baseball games. They were not competitive enough. They just were not the team that they expected to be. And I think that's really, I think that's really the big thing. Like, when you look at their roster, when you really look at the pieces that they brought in, and the fact that they're 22 and 29, it really does make you scratch your head of how much better does this team need to be, or why is this team so bad, or what's going on with this team? Is it the coach? And when you have guys like Castellanos, when you have guys like Bryce Harper, when you have guys like Alec Boehm and Gene Segura, and you have a pitching staff that features Zach Wheeler, who won National League Pitcher of the Month, Zach Eflin, who's been good, Kyle Gibson, who last year got brought in at the trade deadline, stayed with the team, and he's been a nice asset. You even have a guy like Aaron Nola, who's not the same pitcher that he once was, but I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there that wouldn't mind having an Aaron Nola on their roster to be a veteran and a guy who can go out and pitch solid innings for you. He's not the Cy Young Aaron Nola that we all once, saw, but he's still a pitcher that can pitch solid, give you some innings, give you some depth, and win you some games. So when you look at that roster, now I have not talked about the bullpen, when you look at that roster, you expect a lot more wins. So, like I said, when I look at this firing, and I really liked Joe Girardi while he was manager of the New York Yankees, and I was very angry when the Yankees got rid of him after the 2017 run where they got to the ALCS. They got one game away from the World Series for a team that going into the year was really expected to nothing at all. The fact that he got them that far was really pretty wild. They got rid of him, brought in Aaron Boone, who was in a broadcast booth. It just did not make sense. Now, I guess you can now say, oh, good thing the Yankees fired him when they did. Hindsight 2020, I guess it was smart, but not that Aaron Boone's had major success with the team anyway. I mean, I don't want to complain. Yankees right now are 36 and 15 and got a very good 2 wins yesterday, and they look like they're on their way to having a very great year this year. Maybe winning 110, maybe winning 105, 110 games with the rate we're going right now, and you hope we keep it up. But back to the point with the Phillies, right? They, brought in Girardi in 2020, and when they brought him in, I was very high on the move. I thought that it was a very good move. He took a couple years off. He had great success with the Yankees, winning a World Series, getting them to that World Series, LCS, Game 7 against the Astros, which all along they were cheating. Although in that Game 7, it didn't matter because the Yankees didn't score a run. So, even if the Astros weren't cheating, the Yankees weren't going to win anyway because they didn't score a run. But still, the point is you go into this hiring and you're like, you get a veteran manager, a guy who played, seen the game from multiple different angles, and you bring him into a market. Like, it was a perfect match. Like, you bring him into a market that he knows how to handle. Like, a lot of times people, when they bring in coaches, you wonder, okay, number one, what's their experience? What's their background? Number two, can they handle the pressure? Now, oftentimes you ask that about big markets. You ask it about the Dodgers. You ask it about the Yankees. The Phillies are a big market. The Phillies are, Philly's a very high pressure, city. The fans expect a lot out of their teams. It's the same thing with New York. If you're struggling, you're going to hear it. Same thing with Boston. Same thing with, a lot of these cities. If you're struggling, you're going to hear it from the fans. There's a lot of pressure. When they brought him in, he was the New York Yankees manager. So there's not a lot of other places that have more pressure on you than the manager of the New York Yankees. And he was very successful in his time with the Yankees. So when he was brought in here, you're thinking to yourself, this is great. We got a guy that played, was pretty successful while he's played, won a World Series with the Yankees, which is one of the hardest things to do because not many people out there are built for New York, built for the big market, built for the bright lights. And you bring him into Philly and you're like, look, bright lights here too. You got a fan base that, the Phillies have been so bad for so long, have such a long playoff drought. Not the same team that a lot of them saw, during the days of Mike Schmidt and even during more recently, not really very recently now, but back in the days, where they made back-to-back World Series in 2008 and 2009. Obviously, 2008 defeating the Rays, 2009 losing to the Yankees in 6 games. As we all know, the Yankees' last World Series title, they've not been the same team since. And you bring him in and you think of all these great things that could happen, and it just hasn't been good. It just has not gone the right way. And a lot of times that happens. You see that sometimes, where you bring in a coach or you bring in a player, and you're like, this is great, this is awesome, this is going to work. 2 years later, either the guy's fired or you trade the player, or it's just not working and the guy's either, doing nothing. And look at the Jets and Le'Veon Bell. When we brought in Le'Veon Bell, we were all like, oh, this is great. Jets are going to, soar now. And Le'Veon Bell was gone in his midway through the second year with the team. Similar situation here with Joe Girardi. Right? You bring him in, this is great, this is awesome, I love this. And now it's, where do we go from here? Do we even come back from this 22-29 early season deficit? And like I said, when I look at Joe Girardi, and I'm doing this because I really liked Joe Girardi while he was the manager of the Yankees. I thought he did an excellent job. And I still like him a lot. I still think he's a capable manager. I think there was some things that were in his control that he did not do well, and I think there's a lot of things that are out of his control. I'll start with the things that the team kind of did well. Hold on. Let me just give you an overview. Right? They go out in the offseason, and this is why I think they did go the route of firing him. Because you go into an offseason where you bring in Castellanos, you bring in Schwarber, you add that to a lineup that already has the reigning NL MVP in Bryce Harper. Alec Boehm, who's having his best year of his career. You add that to Gene Segura, right? JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins. I mean, you have a very, very good lineup top to bottom. Now you got Nicky Moniak, one of the top prospects, a guy who has a very bright future, a lot of people think. So you add him to the category. You look at that lineup and you're thinking to yourself, you could put that lineup against a lot of other good teams and you can win with it. Then you look at the pitching and you're thinking to yourself, the pitching's solid. We have some solid names when it comes to pitching. We have a lot of guys that can give you good innings. Now, do the Phillies, I wouldn't say they really have that one guy. They don't have that one guy. I guess you could make the argument that Zach Wheeler is, but I wouldn't put Zach Wheeler in the same category of a DeGrom or a Walker Buehler, or a Joe Musgrove who's been dominant this year, right? Thinking of National League pitchers, right? Or Corbin Burns, right? Every team kind of has that ace, right? I think the Phillies, when you look at it, they have a very balanced pitching staff. It's not one guy and a bunch of 4 other guys. It's multiple guys that are solid. They're not Jacob deGrom or Max Scherzer, but they're solid. They're not, you don't have a Corbin Burns, you don't have a Walker Buehler, you don't have a Nestor Cortez, you don't have a Joe Musgrove. You don't have one of the elite pitchers right now in baseball. You don't have a Kevin Gausman, but you have Zach Wheeler, who's very solid. You have Zach Eflin, who's done a good job. You have Kyle Gibson, who's done good. You have Aaron Nola, who's not the same pitcher he once was, but still a guy, still a solid piece to add to that rotation. So you go into the season, you're thinking to yourself, look, he has his options. He has the pieces in place. And this is where I think at the end of the day, they ended up firing him. when you look at the roster and you look at the pieces in place and you look at the record of 22-29, that's inexcusable. Now, I think there's some things that Girardi could have done better, and I also think there's some things that are in his control. Let me start with the things that he could have that are kind of in his control. And I'll start with the things that are, out of his control. I was watching the Phillies-Giants game a couple games ago. It was the first game of the 3-game set. It was a Memorial Day, right? I think it was Memorial Day. Because the Rangers played... Was it Sunday? It was Sunday. It was the day before Memorial Day because the Rangers had the Sunday night game. So I was just watching baseball all day because I needed to find a way to calm myself down because I was so nervous. I was nervous all day long for that Ranger Game 7, and I had to wait all the way until 8 o'clock to watch it. Rangers obviously ended up winning all that good stuff. But I was waiting all day, so I was watching baseball. I was watching the Cubs-Brewers game. I was just engulfing baseball. I was just watching baseball because I was trying to calm. The Yankees didn't play that day. They had a... This might have been Memorial Day. I'm trying to think. I don't think it was. No, I believe I'm 99% sure. Because this might have been Memorial Day then. This might have been, I don't know. It was one of the days. I believe it was the first game of the 3-game set against the Giants. And Nick Castellanos gets on base. And this is kind of like, when I saw this happen, I was thinking to myself, keep notifications on after this game because that might have been it for Joe Girardi. And I guess it's not all Girardi's fault on this one. It could have been the base coaches. But this to me was like one of the worst things that I've seen a manager or a coaching staff do was take out your best hitter, Nick Castellanos, one of your best hitters, him or Harper. Choose from the two. They're both great. And put in a pinch runner, Roman Quinn. Not nearly the same bat. Got a lot more speed. But, not nearly the same bat. You're taking a very good bat out of the lineup to put in a guy, put in a speed guy, put in a guy who, on a single through the gap or a double in the gap scores easily. You give him the steal sign, he goes ahead and steals, gets thrown out at second base. You now wasting that bat, I believe, was it Hoskins that was up? It was somebody like that was up. You wasting that bat, he gets thrown out at second base. That cannot happen. That's just bad baseball. That's bad coaching. That's just bad decision making. If Joe Girardi ultimately made that decision or gave the third base coach the sign or the signal or said, look, if Roman Quinn gets on, steal him right away. If at the end of the day, if he did that, that's on him. That's something that a manager should not be doing. Now, if you steal him and he gets there, that's great. But it's also about, do you trust him against his catcher's arm? Because he was out by a mile. It wasn't even that close. And they showed the replay. It didn't look like he got a bad jump. It just looked like the catcher just made a good play. And that's an issue because if you're doing that against a very good catcher, you're going to have problems. So that right there was something when I looked at that, I was like, yeah, that's on Girardi and the coaching staff. And sure, there's moments where, pinch hitting for certain guys or, in moments in games, bringing a certain guy out of the bullpen, right? Maybe bringing a guy that's, not pitched a lot or bringing a guy or taking out a pitcher. There's been times this season where the Phillies have taken out pitchers, brought in their bullpen, and their bullpen blows it. That's on Girardi. You let the starter go a little bit longer, you maybe win those games. What's kind of out of Girardi's control is a little bit of the bullpen at times. Because I think there's just a lack of talent in the bullpen. I mean, the bullpen blowing games left and right. You put anybody in at manager. I mean, look. Are we going to fire Aaron Boone because Chapman stinks? Right? I think there's certain times where, like I said, I blame Boone for the Tampa loss. Marinaccio, he should have not have put him in. He should have put Clark Schmidt in right from the get-go. Put in Marinaccio, he was awful. Hit by pitches, walking runs, all that stuff. Yankees end up losing. That's on Boone. Certain times this season, Girardi has brought in guys that there was probably a better option in the bullpen that he left out there, and either that guy blows it or that guy doesn't have his control that day. That's on the manager. Not going with the best pitcher in the situation, or maybe being too analytical, not being, that old school manager that he always has been, going with his gut, going with the best available guy out there. So there has been moments. But there's also been moments where he goes with the players, or there's also been moments where he goes with the guy or goes with the high-end guys in the bullpen and they just stink. There's been moments where no matter who he puts in the bullpen, they just stink. That's not on him. Look, that's not on him. The defense, I think, he could go either way. Is he teaching habits that should not be taught? Is he maybe, during practice, or not even practice, but going all the way into the offseason, was there maybe not enough focus on the little things? That could possibly be. But you look at the play the other night, where you had the ground ball to first and Familia doesn't cover first. That's not really all the manager's fault. That's just a bad baseball play by a player. That's just a brain fart by the player. That's not all Girardi's fault. Girardi can't do anything. That's just a mental mistake by a player. So there's things. It's kind of 50-50. But at the end of the day, do I agree with the move to fire him? Look, I don't think Rob Thompson's going to change things. I really don't. The bullpen's so bad. You're not going to be able to win with a bullpen that bad. You aren't. And I don't care what the manager is. Maybe little tweaks here and there, or maybe different decision making here and there. Maybe just, at the end of the day, they did say that the team needed a new voice. And like I said, I see both sides of it. I see where you got a ton of talent on a roster and you're 22 and 29. And I also see where, look, your bullpen stinks. You're blowing games left and right. The offense is doing its job. It's the bullpen that's not doing its end of the stick. What is Girardi supposed to do? Right now, he really doesn't have many guys out there that he can rely on. So that's the issue. So that's where I kind of see it. Like, I see where they're coming from, but I also see it's like, really? Like, what's the point? You're 22 and 29. Like, you couldn't have waited a little bit longer. And now you bring in Rob Thompson. So you'll see what he can do. Now, I'll tell you what, Thompson, he might bring in his own spin, but he's been with Girardi his whole career. So I'm not going to tell you, I'll tell you that he might not be completely different than Girardi. He might do a lot of what Girardi would do because he's been next to him his entire career. But the first domino has fallen in the MLB season. Joe Girardi fired as Phillies manager Rob Thompson to be the interim. Joe Girardi did not last 3 full seasons as the Philadelphia manager. The team announced the 57-year-old's firing Friday, and bench coach Rob Thompson will take over on an interim basis. Girardi talked about the move during his weekly appearance on the MLB Network radio per Alex Kofi of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Here's what he said today on the MLB Network radio. He said, "I think you understand it's better as you go through it more times and we underperform. So that falls on me. So this is what happens." The Phillies hired Girardi ahead of the 2020 season after he previously managed for the Florida Marlins for one season in 2006 and the Yankees from 2008 through 2017. He won a World Series with the Yanks in 2009 and helped guide them to the postseason 6 times. Philadelphia won just 28-32 and finished in 3rd place in the National League East in the shortened 2020 season during his first year at the helm. It took a step forward in 2021 at 82-20 in the second place, but still missed the playoffs. 82-20, that can't be right. It's got to be 82 and 80? It's got to be 82 and 80. 82 and 20 is not right. If you went 82 and 20, it's 82 and 80 probably, but still missed the playoffs. That did nothing to temper expectations heading into the 2022 season. The Phillies have had the 4th highest payroll in the league and added sluggers Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber to a roster that included Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Zach Wheeler, and Aaron Nola. Those elevated expectations are why Girardi's job security was such a topic of discussion following a May 19th loss to the New York Mets. The Phillies were swept in a 3-game series and fell to 21-27 and 10.5 games back in the division. Girardi said, I don't worry about my job. He went on to say, I've never worried about my job. I don't worry about my job. I've got to do my job. It's the business of being a manager. I don't worry about it. Castellanos also turned heads when he said, per Kofi, I don't know how to describe the energy now, but it's obviously not where it needs to be because we're not playing like we should. Perhaps the front office believes changing the manager will provide the energy that Girardi didn't for a franchise that has consistently underperformed. Girardi finishes his run as Philly manager with a record of 132 and 141, so 9 games below 500. Their 22 and 29 mark this season is tied with the Chicago Cubs for the 4th worst record in the National League. Philadelphia's last playoff appearance was in 2011, and Girardi won't be the one to snap that drought. So maybe it will be Rob Thompson. Look, they said that they needed a new voice. Here is the statement from the president. Rob, this is the, Bobby Meacham was also relieved of his duties. This is the, article from Rob Dombrowski. The Phillies have relieved Joe Girardi of his duties as manager. This is pretty long. Let's see, where is Felt? felt our club has not played. We all blah blah blah. We felt as a team that we need a new voice. So that's kind of how it is. He just feels that they need a new voice, and maybe Rob Thompson is that voice. But you gotta wonder, is he that voice? Is he not? What is he gonna be? I can't. I know. I mean, Rob Thompson's been a guy that a lot of people think should have had a manager job for a long time. Here's the issue: he's been with Girardi's entire career, so you wonder if he's going to do a lot. His manager style might be like Girardi's, or he might bring his own little twist. We'll see. But anyway, Philly's they're running out of time. They got to figure out a way to climb out of this 7-game below 500 hole that they find themselves in. All right, so let's get to the rest of the baseball here. Today, you got the Marlins, Giants, Reds, Nationals, Phillies, Angels. That'll be their first game. It's always interesting to see how teams find a way after, sometimes teams do that where, like, they'll fire a manager or they'll call a team meeting. They always say this, call a team meeting before you play like a bad team. Like, if the Yankees were to call a player-only meeting, you do it before you play like the Orioles. So then you can come out, dominate them the next game, and be like, oh, yeah, team meeting's working. Because if you call a team meeting and then you lose the next day, the team meeting's not working, right? I've always found that to be the funny thing. A lot of times, or you fire a manager. If you fire a manager, then you come out and you get swept. Well, obviously, there's problems there. Anyway, moving on here. Pirates, Diamondbacks, Orioles, Guardians, Blue Jays, Twins, Rays, White Sox, Rangers, Mariners, Royals, Astros, Padres, Brewers, Rockies, Braves, Red Sox, A's. Mets, Dodgers tonight, game 2 of the 4-game set. Mets come into this one 35-18. Dodgers come into this one 34-17. 10 p.m. Eastern, Sportsnet LA and SNY. Chris Bassett on the mound for the Mets. He's 4-2 with a 3.6 ERA, and the Dodgers got Anderson on the mound. He's 6-0 with a 2.90 ERA, over-under set at 8. And for the Yankees, it's Yankees Tigers, first game of a 3-game set. Yankees come into this one 36-15. Tigers come into this one 21-30. Eduardo Rodriguez on the mound for the Tigers. He's 0-0 with a 6.17 ERA. And the Yankees got Garrett Cole on the mound tonight. He's 4-1 with a 3.12 ERA. The over-under set at 7.5. This game is on tonight, 7:05 p.m. Eastern. It's on terrible Apple TV+. I mean, their coverage is awful on baseball. And as for hockey, tonight, Rangers Lightning game 2. Avalanche shut down the Oilers last night 2-0, so got the shutout. They're up 2. They take a commanding 2-0 lead. Rangers look to do the same. They're up 1-0 in the series. Over-under right now set at 5.5. 8 p.m. Eastern, ESPN, Madison Square Garden. Let's go Rangers. Take a commanding 2-0 lead. Tonight's a big, big game. All right, as for fantasy baseball, I'm currently winning in my main league 193-143. And today I've got going Chris Bassett and Zach Eflin. Now, for the pitching. Now, Gene Segura got placed on the IL, so I still have him just on my bench because I'm waiting for an IL spot to open up. And as for my other league, I'm winning 154-104, and I've got my pitching is Joe Musgrove. I got Joe Musgrove on the mound tonight. So, like I said, my main league again, I got Chris Bassett and Zach Eflin, so I got another Met pitcher going. In that Dodger-Met game. Tony Gonsolin had a really good game last night for me. Yeah, anyway, that will do it. As you all know, I take breaks on the weekend. So, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy all the great sports that are on. Rangers, basketball, baseball, all that good stuff. Exciting weekend ahead. As you all know, I do my Bubs Talking Baseball podcast, so that will be up Sunday. And, that will do it. See you all back here on Monday. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.